The fluorescent lights hummed softly in David's workshop as I stood there, surrounded by his tools, his half-finished projects, and the lingering scent of machine oil that would always remind me of him. My husband had spent countless hours in this space, especially in the last 5 years of his life. Now, just hours after the will reading, I was here alone, trying to understand why this room had meant so much to him. My name is Emily Chen, and 1 week ago, I lost my husband to a heart attack at age 42. Today, I learned that his family had lost their minds over his will. The workshop? David's sister Janet had sneered when the lawyer read that part. She gets his collection of broken machines and rusty tools. How appropriate. The rest of his family hadn't bothered to hide their smirks. They were too busy celebrating their own inheritances, the house in the Hamptons, the investment portfolio, vacation properties. What they didn't understand was that this workshop had been David's sanctuary. For 15 years, I'd watched him transform this space from a simple garage into something that looked more like a cross between a precision machine shop and a high-tech laboratory. The equipment alone was worth more than they realized, but I knew there had to be more. "You don't understand what I'm building," he'd tell me in those final years, his eyes bright with excitement but tired from the long hours. "When it's ready, everything will change." I ran my hand along his main workbench, remembering those conversations. David had always been brilliant, a mechanical engineer with a gift for seeing solutions others missed. But in the last 5 years, something had shifted. He became more secretive, working late into the night, keeping his projects carefully covered when anyone visited. His family had interpreted his behavior as failure, assuming he was hiding financial troubles or failed experiments. Poor Emily, his mother would say at family gatherings, stuck with a dreamer who can't even succeed as a simple engineer. They never knew that David had quit his corporate job not because he failed, but because he discovered something too important to trust to his employers. Something he needed to develop independently, away from corporate control and profit motives. A metallic glint caught my eye, something tucked behind a panel under his main computer station. My hands trembled slightly as I removed the panel, revealing a small safe I'd never seen before. Next to it was an envelope with my name written in David's precise engineer's handwriting. "My dearest Emily," the letter began, "if you're reading this, something has happened to me before I could complete my work. But I know you'll understand what needs to be done. The safe combination is the date we first met. You were the beginning of everything good in my life, and you'll be the one to finish what I started." I wiped away tears as I entered the numbers. Inside the safe was a single USB drive and another note. "Watch this alone, then decide." My laptop whirred to life as I plugged in the drive. Folders appeared, meticulously organized in David's style. Technical drawings, simulation data, and a video file dated just 2 weeks ago. David's face filled my screen, looking tired but excited. "Hi, love," he said, and I had to pause the video for a moment, overwhelmed by hearing his voice again. When I continued, his words left me breathless. "What I'm about to show you is going to change everything, not just for us, but for the world. 5 years ago, I discovered something while working on military contract projects. Something they didn't even realize was possible." He held up a small device, barely larger than a smartphone. "This prototype combines quantum tunneling principles with a new type of energy collection system. In simple terms, it can generate clean, nearly unlimited power from ambient temperature differences. No fuel, no emissions, just pure energy from the heat already present in our environment." My mind raced as I understood the implications. If what he was saying was true, this technology could revolutionize energy production worldwide. No wonder he'd been so secretive. "The military contractors," David continued, his expression growing serious, "they wanted to weaponize this, use it for strategic advantages. But this is too important for that. It needs to help everyone, not just the powerful." He explained how he'd spent years perfecting the technology, testing it in ways that wouldn't attract attention. The various machines in his workshop had been cover for his real work, each one containing small tests of his components hidden in plain sight. "I've arranged everything you'll need," he continued. "The patents are already filed under a private trust. The prototypes work. All the documentation is here. But most importantly," he leaned closer to the camera, "I trust you to handle this the right way, to make sure it helps people instead of being buried by those who profit from the current system." There was more detailed technical documentation, test results, even a list of trusted contacts who could help develop and protect the technology. But my attention was drawn to a final video file, dated the day before his heart attack. "Emily," he looked exhausted but triumphant. "It works. The final prototype exceeded all expectations. Tomorrow, I'll show you everything." Well, finally, the video cut off abruptly. Tomorrow never came. Instead, I got a call from his workshop's security system, alerting me that his vital signs had flatlined. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was gone. Now, sitting in his workshop surrounded by what his family thought was worthless junk, I understood the true magnitude of his legacy and the responsibility that came with it. A text message buzzed on my phone. "Janet, dear, we've been thinking. We'll take that cluttered workshop off your hands. Say $5,000. Better than dealing with all that mess." I set the phone aside without replying. First, I needed to understand exactly what David had created. His notes mentioned a trusted team, engineers and scientists who had helped him in secret. I needed to find them. But most importantly, I needed to protect this discovery from those who would bury it. The same forces that had made David so cautious would soon realize what he'd achieved. His family's disdain had actually given us an advantage. No one was looking too closely at the worthless workshop. I began carefully documenting everything, following David's meticulous organizational system. His last 5 years of work were a testament to both his genius and his vision. While others saw scattered tools and random projects, he had built something revolutionary. A soft beeping drew my attention to one of his covered machines. The status light was green. The final prototype was still running, still generating clean power exactly as he'd designed it. Even after his death, his creation continued to work, continued to prove what was possible. I touched the machine gently, feeling its subtle vibration. "I understand now, love," I whispered. "And I promise, your work will help people just like you wanted." The workshop lights seemed brighter somehow, illuminating years of careful development, of hidden brilliance, of a vision too important to abandon. David's family thought they claimed his valuable assets, never realizing that his greatest achievement was sitting right here, humming quietly in a room they dismissed as worthless. Tomorrow would begin a new chapter. But first, I had preparations to make. David had left me more than just a workshop, he'd left me a mission. And I was ready. The next morning, I began implementing David's contingency plan. His notes led me to Dr. Sarah Martinez, a quantum physicist who had helped him develop the core technology in secret. "I was wondering when I hear from you," she said when I met her at a small cafe far from the workshop. "David told me if anything happened to him, you'd be the one to contact." I placed his final prototype on the table between us, carefully wrapped in a cloth. Sarah's eyes widened as she unwrapped it. "He finished it," she whispered. "We weren't sure he'd solve the containment issue." "What exactly did he solve?" I asked. "I understand the basic concept," but she explained, her voice low with excitement. "The device used quantum tunneling to harvest thermal energy from its environment, converting temperature differences into usable electricity with unprecedented efficiency. No fuel, no waste, just clean, constant power. The implications are staggering," she said. "This could end energy poverty worldwide. No more fossil fuels, no more power plants, no more grid dependencies. And no more trillion-dollar energy industries," I added, understanding why David had been so cautious. Sarah nodded grimly. "Exactly, which is why we need to move quickly. Others were close to discovering this too. David just got there first." As if on cue, my phone buzzed. Janet again. "Emily dear, Mother insists we need to inspect the workshop. Family historical value and all that. We'll be there tomorrow morning." I looked at Sarah. "How fast can we clear everything out?" "I'll make some calls. The team has been ready for this." The next 12 hours were a blur of careful activity. David's trusted colleagues, engineers, physicists, lawyers, arrived in unmarked bands, methodically documenting and packing every crucial component. His notes had included detailed instructions for each piece of equipment, every prototype, every record. By dawn, the workshop looked exactly as his family expected. A collection of seemingly random tools and half-finished projects. Everything important was safely relocated to secure facilities David had arranged years ago. Janet and her mother arrived at precisely 9 a.m., dressed inappropriately formally for a workshop inspection. Really, Emily? Her mother sniffed, looking around disdainfully. I don't know how you let him waste so much time in here. All these bizarre contraptions. I watched them poke through the remaining tools, secure in knowing they'd never recognize what had been created here. They were looking for obvious value, expensive equipment they could sell, precious metals, anything to validate their belief that David had secretly accumulated wealth. What's this thing? Janet asked, pointing to one of the decoy projects David had built specifically to look unfinished and worthless. Just another one of his experiments, I said quietly. He was always trying new ideas. They left an hour later, clearly disappointed but still condescending. Well, Janet said, our offer to take this burden off your hands still stands. Though perhaps $5,000 was a bit generous. That's very thoughtful, I replied, but I think I'll keep it, for sentimental reasons. Once they were gone, I contacted Sarah. Everything was in place at the secure facility. David's team had worked through the night, setting up the equipment exactly as his plan specified. What happened next would change everything. Over the next week, we ran comprehensive tests on the final prototype. Every trial confirmed what David had achieved. Stable, clean energy production at a scale that defied conventional physics. His documentation was flawless, his patents airtight. Then came the moment I'd been both anticipating and dreading. We needed to take the technology public before someone else developed it with less altruistic intentions. I chose the venue carefully, a renowned technical university with a track record of ethical innovation. The presentation was scheduled, invitations sent to carefully selected scientists, journalists, and industry experts. The morning of the demonstration, Janet sent one final text. Heard you're doing some sort of science presentation. Don't embarrass the family more than you already have. I didn't reply. In a few hours, embarrassment would be the last thing on their minds. The auditorium was packed. Sarah and I had prepared meticulously, knowing that skepticism would be our biggest initial hurdle. The device sat on a table, humming quietly, powering the entire presentation setup without any external input. Ladies and gentlemen, I began. What you're about to see will fundamentally change how we think about energy production. The demonstration was flawless. Sensors confirmed the power output. Independent experts verified the readings. When we opened the device to show its internal workings, the auditorium erupted in gasps and furious note-taking. Questions flew from all directions. How was this possible? When could it be scaled up? Who owned the patents? The technology, I announced, belongs to the Chen Clean Energy Trust, established by my late husband David Chen. And we're here to ensure it benefits everyone, not just the highest bidder. The media explosion was immediate. By evening, every major news outlet was covering the story. Revolutionary clean energy technology unveiled. Engineers' final gift to humanity. Energy industry faces paradigm shift. My phone began ringing constantly. Janet, her mother, lawyers claiming to represent family interests. I let them all go to voicemail. Instead, I focused on implementing David's plan. The trust was structured to prevent monopolization. The technology would be licensed affordably, with strict conditions ensuring it remained accessible to developing nations and communities most in need of energy independence. 1 week after the announcement, as media crews camped outside the family's Hampton house hoping for comments, Janet finally cornered me at David's grave, where I'd gone to place fresh flowers. You knew, she accused. All this time, you knew what he was building. No, I replied honestly. I just trusted him. I knew whatever he was working on was important, even if I didn't understand it then. But the family should have a say in how this is handled. The profits will go exactly where David intended. I cut in firmly, to making clean energy accessible to everyone. That's worth more than any amount of private profit. She left in tears, finally understanding what they'd all dismissed. The worthless workshop had contained something more valuable than all their inherited properties combined, not just in monetary terms, but in its potential to help humanity. 3 months later, I stood in our new research facility, watching teams of engineers develop practical applications of David's technology. The first home units were already in production. Remote communities would be the first recipients, followed by hospitals, schools, and other critical infrastructure. Sarah joined me, holding up a tablet showing the latest test results. He would be proud, she said softly, not just of the technology, but of how you've handled everything. I nodded, thinking of the small prototype that still sat in my office, the first one that had shown me what David had achieved. His family had wanted quick profits and easy assets. They never understood that true value isn't always obvious, that the greatest legacies aren't always the ones you can put in a bank account. The facility hummed with activity. Engineers testing new applications, researchers exploring improvements, teams coordinating global implementation plans. David's workshop had been just the beginning. His vision was becoming reality in ways even he might not have imagined. That evening, I visited the workshop one last time before it would be converted into a museum documenting the technology's development. Janet's final offer letter lay unopened on the workbench, their last attempt to claim what they'd once mocked. I smiled, remembering David's words from his final video. This needs to help everyone, not just the powerful. He trusted me to ensure that happened, and I wouldn't let him down. The workshop lights flickered on automatically, powered by one of his early prototypes. Soon, similar technology would light homes and power communities worldwide. Clean, sustainable energy, just as he dreamed. His family had fought over properties and portfolios, never realizing that David's true legacy was something far more valuable: the power to change the world for the better. As I locked up the workshop for the last time, I thought about how appearances can deceive. They'd seen a cluttered garage full of failed experiments. David had seen the future, and now that future was becoming reality, one clean kilowatt at a time. The next generation of devices would be even more efficient, more accessible. Communities that had never had reliable power would soon be energy independent. Hospitals would never lose electricity during storms. Schools in remote areas would have constant access to modern educational tools. That was David's real inheritance, not just to me or his family, but to everyone. A gift that would keep giving, keep growing, keep helping long after all of us were gone. And somewhere I knew he was smiling.